Okay. Let us continue. I think I have 2 more parts left, essentially. Tule's Worries. A short story set during Part 5, Volume 4. Spring has arrived and the snow has just started to melt when Lutz is sent to the Gilberta Company. Ralph's coming-of-age ceremony is on the horizon, and Tule fears he might recognize mine. The idea for the story came to me when several readers asked whether those of the lower city were worried about Ralph's coming-of-age ceremony. Rosemine managed to avoid Zasha's and Seek's ceremonies, but couldn't escape them all. Lutz, Master Benno wants to speak with you, an apprentice told me. Meet him in his office after lunch. I mean, to be completely fair, I can understand why they are worried, considering mine looks essentially the same. You know, they didn't change, like, her hair color. They couldn't change her eye color. She's still as short as she was back then. The only thing that's changed is how she conducts herself and how much, I guess, cleaner and more healthy she looks than then. And I'm assuming that he probably wouldn't remember her, considering he didn't interact with her too much. Only times he really interacted with her is when they helped with the clay tablets. He helped carry her to the gate a few times. She showed them how to make the pancake things in winter. Let's see. That's pretty much the only interactions that we know of that Ralph has had with mine before this whole thing started. Before she became a noble. So, I don't know if he might recognize her. Now, if Lutz had not been aware of all this and hadn't been involved and he didn't know mine anymore, just like the others, he probably will be the only one who might recognize her. But that's just me. Lutz, Master Benno wants to speak with you, an apprentice told me. Meet him in his office after lunch. Right. Now that the snow had started to melt, I could once again travel between the temple and the store. I'd spent the winter looking after Camille, who seemed to have steeled his resolve to join the planting company. Sorry, I had to drink some of my drink. He had visited a short while ago to study for becoming an apprentice merchant and was excited to potentially tour the workshop come spring. Master Benno appreciated his enthusiasm and had even muttered that he was glad not to have to worry about the Gilberta Company or the Merchants Guild nabbing him. Oh, so you see the potential in him, eh? I rushed my lunch and went straight to Master Benno's office. He must have returned to his work as soon as he'd finished eating. Why would we'd be intensely busy next season, so the more we prepared now, the better. I cannot talk, apparently. Master Benno, it's Lutz, I called, knocking on his door. You wanted to see me? Mark opened the door for me. I passed through and saw Master Benno, who was jotting the results of various calculations on his ledgers. Sorry to ask at such short notice, but could you go to the Gilberta Company? Master Benno asked me. Tule approached Karina and Otto about something that was worrying her, and it seems they want your help. I'd go with you, but I'm far too busy. I'll only head over if they absolutely need me. Understood, I said. I grabbed a few things and set out, moving briskly down the snow-speckled streets. The Plantain and Gilberta companies weren't too far apart. It was warmer today than the day before, but that didn't mean it wasn't cold. Still, spring is right around the corner. The Gutenberg's trip, now a yearly occurrence, would come with the changing of the season. A lot had happened among us this past year. Heidi was pregnant with her second child, which meant she couldn't come with us to Kernberger, and Zach was getting married, so he wanted to send his disciple instead. There was plenty to worry about, such as whether Zach's disciple was talented enough to accompany us, and whether the other nobles would even agree to let him come, no matter what mine thought. That reminds me, won't mine be returning to the temple soon? According to Gills, he was scheduled to come back after the feast held to celebrate spring. He hadn't been in particularly high spirits when he'd told me, so I assumed we wouldn't see her anytime soon. It was always obvious when mine was around. Gil ended up in a great mood, and the better food passed down to the orphanage caused the Grey Priest to start looking forward to meals. I wonder what Tule's concerned about. The Gilberta Company's staff were also on their lunch break, and there was only one employee in front of the store. I went over to greet him. Oh, Leon, on lunch duty again? Master Benno asked me to stop by. Long time no see, Lutz. I was told you were coming. Take the outside stairs. Leon was on watch today. He had taught me with the others way back when I was working for the Gilberta Company. I nodded and made my way up to the store's second floor. I used to rent the attic room here. It certainly was nostalgic. Since my move to the second floor of the planting company where I now lived as an apprentice Laharo, I thought I would never see these stairs again. I might have gotten a little too used to my current living arrangement, so I dreaded having to carry water all the way up to the 6th floor whenever I returned home. I knocked on Mrs. Karina's door and relayed my business to the serving woman who answered. She let me inside right away. The Gilberta Company's Laharos, who were relaxing on their break, all watched me as I removed my thick winter coat. Seeing their uniforms brought on another wave of nostalgia and reminded me of just how far I'd come in my career. Master Benno asked me to visit you, I explained once I was inside. I was told you wanted to speak with me. Is he not with you? Mr. Otto asked. He told me he was too busy to come. I see. I was hoping to hear his thoughts as well, but fair enough. He got out of his seat, and Tuli did the same, though she did look strangely disappointed. I don't think it's anything to worry about, but Tuli was losing her head a little. Let's move to the other room. This isn't something we should discuss too openly. In other words, it had something to do with mine. I suspected it was not about her noble persona, but rather something from when she was in the lower city. That much should have been obvious from the moment I was chosen for this task instead of someone else from the planting company. Okay, I forgot. Otto and Karina, I think, know the truth as well. Once we moved to another room, Mr. Otto urged me to take a seat. I sat down as a guest, and Tuli poured tea for the three of us. She placed my cup with feminine grace, and it was then that I realized my hands had gotten larger than hers. I still sometimes went to the forest with the orphans, but Tuli only ever worked inside, so her skin looked a lot paler than mine. She also had servants to do her chores, so her hands were largely unblemished, though the same was true for me. The scent of Rensham seemed to follow her around, such that I doubted anyone who met her would assume she'd come from a poor family. I'd never noticed all these things about her since I usually saw her when we were both back home, and she tried not to stand out by wearing old clothes and speaking as she used to. Seeing her now, though, I realized she wasn't anywhere near as clumsy as before. She fit right in as a member of the Gilberta Company, which explained why Mr. Otto had agreed to her visiting the castle when she came of age. I want to come of age, too. Age was the only area in which I couldn't compete, which sucked. I continued to watch Tuli in my head swimming with thoughts until she eventually frowned at me. Is something the matter? Your staring is making me self-conscious. Oh, it's nothing. I was just thinking you're so fancy and elegant now. Really? Uh-oh. This is getting Mr. Otto thinking, too. Tuli sat next to me, looking a little embarrassed. Mr. Otto watched us with a slight grin on his face, though I couldn't imagine why. Oh, really? Ever think that maybe that was supposed to have been flirting in his eyes to her? Watch what you say, Lutz, or else his good will be turned around on you. So, Tuli, what are you worried about, I asked. Does it have something to do with mine, I assume? That's right. Remember how I went home for winter this year? I made my dress with Mom, though I was making my hairpin on my own, and we started chatting about the coming-of-age ceremony. We were trying to decide whether I should go from home or from the Gilberta Company. Tuli would come of age at the end of summer. Mrs. Effa had spent the winter making her the perfect dress, and Tuli had come up with a design that suit it. They'd apparently had a lot of spare time on their hands this year, as they hadn't received any urgent orders for the royal family. Most people would count their blessings, but Tuli says she actually felt bored not having mine's wacky shenanigans to deal with. And that's when it hit me. Isn't Ralph coming of age at the end of spring? I started wondering whether he'll recognize mine when she performs the ceremony. Now I can't stop thinking about it. Mine had rarely ever gone outside, so even her neighbors had a hard time remembering her face. Ralph was different, though. He had spent a lot more time with her, owing to his closeness with Tuli, and played a hand in making her recipes for the rest of us. I told her not to worry, but Mr. Otto shot Tuli a look. She pressed her lips together. I mean, won't it be really bad if he does recognize her? It wouldn't be great, but I doubt it's even going to come to that, Mr. Otto said nonchalantly. Nobody would remember the face of a kid they met maybe a few times a month around the time of their baptism. Aren't you two the same way? I pondered the question. Actually, I think I remember everyone. As kids, we'd never had much reason to venture far from home. We'd spent most of our time with our neighbors and grown up alongside them. Only after our baptisms had we split up for apprentice work. And even then, it was rare to meet anyone from outside the city. We Gutenbergs were the odd ones going from province to province. And that's why Johann still doesn't have a single new patron. Most customers came from spring to autumn, which was precisely when Johann was away for work. By this point, most people saw Gutenberg as a title for those who worked exclusively for Lady Rosemine. She paid well, and working with the Ob's adopted daughter was great publicity for any workshop, but the repeated absences on long trips were inevitably bad for business. I remember everyone, Thule said, snapping me out of my thoughts. I wouldn't forget a single person I grew up with, or anyone from the workshop I joined after my baptism. I voiced my agreement. It was common practice in the lower city to get work through your parents, and most people married within the same social circle, so you basically ended up knowing everyone around you. Growing up wouldn't be enough to forget them. Mr. Otto, I think you only feel that way because you were a traveling merchant, I said. We lived here our whole entire lives and remember almost everyone we met. Well, that's interesting, he mused aloud. Was there anyone who passed away before your baptisms? If so, do you remember them? I thought back to everyone in our neighborhood who had passed away. Though some of their faces were fuzzy to me, not one of them had vanished from my mind. Most of them were old, but I remember them all, even the kids who died when I was young. But you remember them as they were at that age, don't you? If you saw someone who looked like an older version of someone you knew had passed on, would you assume it's the same person? Surely not. Nobody in their right mind would immediately assume their death was a hoax. That's the point here. Mine was tiny to begin with, and she'd spent 2 years asleep, so she didn't even look 10 years old. Her appearance had changed considerably since her days as a commoner, and anyone who thought she might have faked her death would expect her to look on the cusp of coming of age. Her youth wasn't strange to us, so we'd stayed in touch with her the entire time, but Ralph would find it much harder to piece everything together. Wait, so at the beginning of the series, Thule was getting ready for her baptism, which was at 7 years old. And I think she's 2 years older than mine? Normally. So she's supposed to be what? There's no way she's only 11 at this point. Because Thule's getting ready to come of age. Okay, now I'm getting myself confused here. So essentially, when this whole thing started, and mine became a noble, she was, I think, around 8, and they had her go back to being 7 as Rosemine. So, she's 10, but that still doesn't make any sense to me. She should still be older than that. Like, this is part 5. Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's about to be 4. She's about 14 at this point, or she's 13, going to be 14, I think. I'm getting myself confused because they mentioned 10 years old, so I thought she was 10, but I was like, wait, the math ain't mathin', essentially. Okay. Her appearance had changed considerably since her days as a commoner, and anyone who thought she might have faked her death would expect her to look on the cusp of coming of age. Okay, her youth wasn't strange to us, says we'd stayed in touch with her the entire time, but Ralph would find it much harder to piece everything together. Not to mention, Otto continued, the way Lady Rosemine acts and dresses is completely distinct from anything we might have expected from little old mine back in the day. Would he really assume that some girl he once knew was behind all the blessings everyone in the city keeps raving about? I'd seen mine give blessings in Halden's and Groschel, and yeah, she was barely even recognizable, but of course the smug little grin she gave right after shadowed the mystical, almost dreamlike feel of the moment. Not to mention, kicking up a fuss about the Archduke's adopted daughter being a commoner could easily be seen as sedition, whatever. Heck, if you think he might run his mouth, warn him in advance that they look pretty similar and that he shouldn't say anything he might regret. Thule, would you do that for me? Thule asked, genuinely worried. I understood why she was so sensitive about mine, though the thought of going home made me pause. Our parents had more or less decided that Thule and I would get married. Ah, there we go. That's what is popping up. And Ralph gave me hell about it every chance he got. Of course, because he wanted to be the one to be with Thule. But obviously that wasn't going to happen because it would have to be someone who knew about mine's secret. Because it'd be kind of hard to keep that kind of secret from your husband, you know? I would much rather avoid him. I just really, really don't want to turn this into a problem for Lady Rosamund. Tully continued, staring at me intently. She looked stunning, and that was coming from someone used to seeing noble women and rich merchant girls. I couldn't blame Ralph for gasping and goggling when she returned home for winter. Ralph might have dated a bunch of girls. In fact, he's dating another as we speak. Wonder who he's dating. But Tilly still means a lot to him. Even though everything had changed and they never met up or even spoken anymore, she had a special place in Ralph's heart. It reminded me of the way that mine still mattered to me, and the resemblance made me a little uncomfortable. Sieg told me it was normal for men whenever he saw Ralph on my case, which might have meant that he'd experienced the same thing. Okay, I relented. I'll speak with Ralph the next time I go home. I'm going to be in Kernberger during his ceremony. I don't want anything to happen while I'm gone, so I'll do what I can before then. Thanks, Lutz. I appreciate it. Not much else I can do when mine might be facing a problem. I stood up with a sigh, which prompted Mr. Arl to shoot us both a wry smile. You two really are alike, huh? He said. How? You both love Lady Rosamund way too much. Mine was a frequent topic of conversation whenever we came together. The hairpin she ordered, the books she enjoyed, what we were printing. I wasn't sure that I agreed with us loving her way too much, though. I mean, that is her sister, and that is his childhood friend. I exchanged a glance with Tully. She looked as unconvinced as I felt, which told me we were on the same wavelength. I shrugged, she nodded, and we both rounded on Mr. Otto. Not nearly as much as you love Miss Karina, we said at exactly the same time. Yeah, that's true. Okay, speaking to Lost Mom. A previously unpublished short story from the online collection, set right after she arrived immediately in Part 5, Volume 4. This is one of Rosamund's conversations with the lay attendant Losfam, who looks after her new library. He seeks information about his lord, who is relocated to Ahrensbach. I elected not to include this conversation in the light novels, as it didn't have much to do with the plot, and it stuck it online instead. Blah, 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 blah. My apologies, Lady Rosamund, but may I request a moment of your time? There is something I wish to ask you. Wait a minute, is this stupid thing still recording? Okay. Sorry, I had to make sure. Damn it, go away. I had just finished speaking with Clarissa and was about to return to the temple when Losfam called out to me. But of course, I said, turning to M, ask away. Losfam had dark green hair, wavy but swept back, and green eyes. He wore a peaceful smile as he looked at me. The sharp fashion he had worn when serving Ferdinand reminded me of a younger Mark. How they spoke and carried themselves seemed mostly the same, so I had arbitrarily ended up liking him more. I was told that Lord Ferdinand is involved with Ahrensbach's religious ceremonies and wished to know the details, Losfam explained. Then why are you so... I paused. Excuse me, it isn't that I don't want to answer. Rather, your expression seems far too tense for someone simply curious about his former lord. Losfam stopped to think, then handed me a sound blocker. He covered his mouth, concerned that someone might try to read his lips, and said, I too have given my name to Lord Ferdinand. As it turned out, Losfam needed to stay in Ehrenfest because he lacked the combat training to stand his ground in a fight. Ahrensbach would have been too dangerous for him as a result. Instead, despite being equally as important as Eckert and Justice, he had been entrusted with overseeing the estate and other belongings his lord had needed to leave behind. Well, that explains that. Lord Ferdinand promised to relocate me to Ahrensbach when the situation there settled down, but I am told almost nothing of his situation, Losfam noted. If you have any information, I would appreciate the opportunity to hear it. I explained that Ferdinand would be performing Ahrensbach's spring prayer, that he was growing more and more frustrated about being stuck in a guest room with no way to do any research, and he was once again skipping meals and sleep to focus on work. He is being made to perform spring prayer, Losfam exclaimed, even though he hasn't been starbound yet? Indeed, cruel is it not? Ob Ehrenfest intends to protest the decision during the next Archduke Conference, though I would assume that Ferdinand appreciates the workload. Even in Ehrenfest, he had used Spring Prayer and the Harvest Festival to circle the duchy and acquire ingredients that took his fancy. I assumed that performing such ceremonies in Ahrensbach would also give him some much-needed respite from being stuck in the castle. True, that is true. And he might find some ingredients that are not native to Ehrenfest, but are native to Ahrensbach, so this would actually be a good thing anyway. I considered a given that Ferdinand will enjoy circling the duchy, especially with Justice, but we would not want his treatment to be considered the norm in Ehrenfest, or the same fate to befall anyone else. Hang on, let me just make sure that was right. Okay. It warms my heart to hear that Lord Ferdinand was able to confide in you, Lawson said, though he wore a terribly conflicted smile. As I understand it, his demeanor hardened when he first entered the temple, and it remained that way until you joined him there. I thought back to the days when he had needed to perform the duties of the high priest and the high bishop almost entirely on his own, and to all the potions he depended on just to get by. There was a time when we were lacking both mana and people to help with the temple's administration work. I still remember his relief when we first performed the dedication ritual together. Though I do not know how Arensbach performs its ceremonies, I doubt Lord Ferdinand has much control over theirs as he did ours. I worry he will try to bottle up the stress of the burden thrust upon him. I could see why Lawson was concerned. Ferdinand had gained control of Ehrenfest's ceremonies only after getting rid of the previous High Bishop. He was bound to be more restricted in Arensbach's temple. As for his stress levels, though, I was prone to wearing my heart on my sleeves. He was a pure-blooded noble and would never let his true emotions show in front of his Arensbach retainers. Yeah, he wouldn't. If only I could meet him face to face, I said, I would know just by looking at him whether he was stretched too thin. Even the letters he writes me are monitored, so he cannot tell me anything of substance. Mere moments ago, I had assumed that Ferdinand would appreciate his tour of the duchy. Now I wasn't so sure. I hope he writes to me while he's performing spring prayer, but I doubt he will. He was so busy that he replied to only one of every 3 letters I sent him, and in one of his responses he had explained that he would be educating Letizia alongside the trip. Using my own education as a benchmark, I could guess that he wouldn't have time for correspondence. Still, I said we need only wait for him to marry, that he should receive a hidden room and stop being treated as a guest. I pray that he will summon you soon. Indeed, Lawson replied. I eagerly await the day he calls for me. Seeing his small, bright smile, I somehow envied the fact that Ferdinand had promised to reunite with him. Not that I want him to summon me. I wouldn't leave Ehrenfest for as long as my family called it home. The next time Ferdinand sends me a letter on notice, I would not mind relaying the contents to you, I said. In return, I will ask that you tell me what you know about him. For example, did he ever blunder at the Royal Academy? Please tell me now while we have the chance. Lawson looked nostalgic as he thought back to the past. Lord Ferdinand did not blunder during the school year. I took great care to ensure as much. As for when the other students were at home, however, there might be a few such incidents that would interest you. I look forward to hearing about them. And with that, I continued on my way. He's nice. I like him. Okay, here's another one. Effa, How They've Grown. A previously unpublished short story from the online collection that takes place around the time of Part 5, Volume 4. Les and Tully came home out of nowhere with news about Effa's job. They explained that she received permission to visit the temple, though Camille wasn't quite so lucky. He sure has grown up fast. This short story takes place at almost the same time as the one that follows it. Both focus on when Effa was permitted to visit the temple. Mom, Camille, I'm home. And I'm here too. One afternoon, when Spring's baptism ceremony was drawing near, Tully arrived at our door with Lutz in tow. Camille and I were preparing food when we saw them, and our eyes widened in surprise. Can Lutz join us for dinner? Tully asked. Yes, of course, I said, but didn't the two of you tell me you were too busy to come home? Because of all the visiting merchants, both the plant and Gilberta companies were almost overrun with orders around this time of year. Their workload started picking up toward the end of winter, and unless they had something major to report, it usually wasn't until midway through autumn that Lutz and Tully came home. We need to speak about your job, Tully explained to me. Do you know how long Dad is going to be? He was working the morning shift, so it shouldn't be long. Okay, I'll wait for him to get back then. It should save me from having to explain the whole situation twice. Is that okay with you, Lutz? Tully turned to him with a smile as she threw on an apron. She was going to help us prepare dinner. Shouldn't she change her clothes first? No, she probably did that at the Gilberta company. Never mind. Yeah, let's reply with a nod. Not to mention Mr. Gunter's bound to ask the same questions. Better to wait and tell them both together. We had some time on our hands before Gunter was due to arrive, so Lutz stepped out to tell Carla he was going to spend the night at home. I smiled. It's always a relief when you come home with your fiancé. I can't wait to see that little conversation. Tully was the most successful girl on our side of the city, so there was a chance she might get kidnapped if she wandered about on her own. Is that your way of saying this engagement set in stone? Tully asked. Washing the vegetables, she sounded a little worried to me. Yep, Lutz is a year younger than you, but he can pay the bridal price. Knows a lot about our family and even walks you home. We couldn't ask for more. And I mean, he also knows the whole secret about mine, so there's no need to worry about that. Tully would come of age this summer. It was about time for her to start seriously looking for a partner, but she was exceptionally busy with her work as a Laharo of the Gilberta company. She was in a tough spot where she couldn't really look for a partner among her colleagues or here in our poor neighborhood. Lutz was her only option. Not too long ago, Gunter and I had gone over the engagement with Lutz's parents. They thought Lutz was in the same predicament as Thule, too busy to find anyone on his own, and agreed that the pair should get married. And like I said, it also works out that they both know my secret. We could schedule your marriage for right after Lutz comes of age, I said. Or we can wait until you're both ready. We want to work around your jobs, of course. Thule was busy when all the merchants come to Ehrenfest, and Lutz went on long-distance trips every spring. Coming of age would probably change their workload to some degree, so we saw nothing wrong with waiting for them to both settle into things. Marriage? Coming of age? It just doesn't feel real to me, Thule muttered. Give it time. Once you start doing up your hair, get used to how your job changes, and prepare your new place with Lutz, it won't feel as strange anymore. I guess. Seeing her expression, realization washed over me. Uh-oh. Thule, is there someone else you like? Oh, no, not this! Oh, how was she gonna tell her mom that she likes Mr. Meadow? Oh, no! Is she gonna tell her? What's she gonna see if she does? Oh, my God, I want to know! Well, there was someone, but I wasn't nearly enough for them. Yeah. She claimed that such emotions were behind her, but the heart wasn't so simple. Her melancholic smile made me feel awful. She served the Archduke's adopted daughter, which was enough for anyone in the city. If anything hadn't been enough, then it had to have been us, her family. That wasn't your fault, Thule. I'm so proud of all you've accomplished. If anything brought you down, it was us. No, that's not what I meant. The person in question was interested in someone else, so yeah. We could never have been together. We didn't suit each other at all. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be married to him. Thule met my eyes with a look of renewed determination. Engagements are for parents to decide, and I know Lutz really well, so I'm fine with this. Okay, so she's over it, essentially. Or so she says. She can keep telling herself that, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be true. Thule had put all her focus into making Mine's hairpins, so she hadn't given marriage much thought at all. She had the appearance of a young woman who already came of age, but the concerns of a girl who hadn't. How was it for me again? I thought back to my own coming of age. Gunter had shown up and proposed to me every chance he got. He had shown up so much, in fact, that my dad said it was up to me to deal with him. Back then, I was completely overwhelmed. My lips curled into a smile, and that was when Gunter came back. Lutz was with him. As a girl, the very thought of marrying Gunter had seemed so strange to me, but now one of our daughters was about to come of age. You know, Thule, I said in a hushed voice, marriage seemed just as strange when Gunter first started proposing to me. I didn't think we would ever end up together. Dad would cry if he found out you said that. Let's make it our little secret. Yeah, don't make him cry. So what's all this about Effa's job? Gunter asked as we sat down to eat. Thule exchanged a look with Lutz, then giggled. Just the other day, there was a meeting in the temple. The Gilberta Company had to take orders for Lady Rosemine's new hairpin and clothes. As part of that process, Thule had gotten a chance to see her sister again. Mine looked more mature than ever, apparently. She had grown taller out of nowhere and seemed so much more like an adult. If that was what you wanted to tell me, then I already knew, I said. Gunter gave me an update after that incident at the West Gate. He said she looked as though she was about to come of age. No, she didn't. Not even close. She barely looked 10 years old. Yeah, Lutz chimed in. She didn't look out of place in her shin-length skirt, but that's about the most I could say. To be completely fair, yeah, I think he's talking about the growth spurt that she got from the gods. In other words, Gunter had embroidered the truth. Sure, she looked young enough to have been newly baptized, but she has for years. But those skirts actually suit her now, he protested. Anyone would think she's come of age. So he said, but I thought it better to trust Lutz and Thule. Gunter was always biased when it came to mine. Well, enough of that, Thule said. To cut a long story short, Lady Rosamund has grown a decent amount, and Mrs. Karina thinks we should use more mature cloth for her clothes to reflect that. To that end, she wants Mom to come along as a renaissance. We have the temple's permission, so we want you to head there the day after tomorrow. What? I was so surprised that I didn't even know what to say. I'd already known about the title, but it wasn't every day that a commoner got to be with the Archduke's adopted daughter. Gunter saw her twice a year at Haas, and Thule took her hairpin orders, but I hadn't seen my other daughter for a very long time. I'm going to see mine. Meeting in the castle was out of the question, since you need to speak and act properly there, but they can overlook those things in the temple, Tuli explained. The Gilberta Company intends to mediate, though, so you won't be able to speak with her directly. Sorry. I would need to settle for seeing mine from a short distance away so that her noble guards wouldn't get upset with me. Still, I was excited to see how much she had grown with my own eyes. Good for you, Effa, Gunter said with a beaming smile, no less pleased than if this news were for him. I knew he felt guilty about having so many more chances to speak with mine than I did. Would you thank Mrs. Karina for me, I asked Tuli. Of course, dress your best when the day comes. Oh, and here's some Rinsham. Tomorrow I would go to my workshop and tell the foreman that I needed a day off. I wouldn't need to worry about my request being refused as long as I explained that I was going to the temple as a renaissance. Preparing for the temple was no small ask. I would need to fix up my best dress and wash my hair with Rinsham. Let's beckoned to Camille and said, Camille, there's something I gotta tell you. Oh? Camille rushed over to Let's, his golden brown eyes ablaze with excitement. He was the spitting image of mine, which both warmed my heart and put a lump in my throat. You wanted to tour the workshop, right? I'm sorry to say the temple won't let you. Aw, but I was really looking forward to it. They can't allow unbaptized kids into the temple, Let's explained, shaking his head. And as many more nobles are going to be visiting the temple from this spring onward, a tour will put the planting company in danger. As much as it pained me to see Camille so disappointed, I was honestly relieved. Hearing that nobles would start frequenting the temple reminded me of when a noble from another duchy had showed up out of the blue, which had resulted in mine being taken away from us. I wouldn't crush my son's dreams when he just resolved to follow in mine's footsteps and make books of his own, but as a mother, I wanted to keep him as far away from nobles as I could. This can't be, Camille whined. Dirk and Conrad said they couldn't wait to show me around. That's enough, Camille, Tuli said. It isn't Let's fault. He did as much as he could to get you a tour. Not to mention, if you can't accept the noble's decision, even when they've gone out of their way to explain it, then you should give up on joining the planting company at all. Camille pursed his lips and fell silent. Let's patted his head and apologized. I thought the temple wouldn't mind since we're doing so much for the orphanage, and the people there seemed open to the idea when I first put it forward. It was the High Bishop who turned it down, which goes to show how real the danger must be. Don't forget the charm she gave us. Mine was the High Bishop, but some of the temple's priests knew she was a commoner, and she was only a figurehead for the archducal family, but she couldn't just do whatever she wanted. Gunter nodded. Lady Rosemine's devoted to protecting commoners from nobles. Back when a noble from another duchy was kicking up a fuss at the west gate, she sent her personal guards to help us without a second thought. If she thinks this is too dangerous for you, then we should believe her. He went on to recount what mine had said when they'd reunited at the west gate. Camille and I heard the story more times than we could count, but Tuli and Lutz were excited to hear it. They had been in a meeting at the temple when it all happened, so they had seen nobles rush out at her command. By that point, she was giving orders as naturally as a proper noble, Lutz recalled. Her voice was so sharp, Tuli added. I couldn't believe it. Gunter nodded. She sends Lord Daniel to the gate whenever we have noble trouble, so the men are always glad to see him. Camille pursed his lips, bored, and trudged back to his seat. Then he glared at me, his cheeks puffed out in protest. How come you're allowed to go to the temple, Mom? It isn't fair. I hate the High Bishop. Ah, if only he knew! She gets to go because not only is she an adult, but she's also making clothes for the High Bishop. So of course she's got to go. I understood why he was throwing a tantrum, but I was so incredibly excited to see mine up close again. If you keep saying things like that, then you might stop getting all those new books. She's the reason we get them, you know. The day had finally arrived. I went to the temple with the Gilberta Company and stood where I was told to, watching mine from a respectable distance. She really had grown. Even her countenance had changed. Any traces of immaturity were gone, and she now wore the expression of an adult. Back when she had lived with us, mine had spent most of her time stuck in bed. I still remember her sunken cheeks and pale skin, but her face looked so much healthier now, and she had a considerably warmer complexion. Her glossy hair was well maintained, she wore fancy clothes, and a beautiful stone-decorated hair ornament sat beside the best hairpin Tuli had made to date. On top of everything else, the way mine acted like a proper noble meant that nobody would ever suspect she was my daughter. That said, she's still the same in certain ways. Lady Rosemine, Tuli said, I see that your facial features have matured as well. Do you have anything in mind for your summer hairpin? Are there any particular flowers you would like me to use? My tastes are largely the same, so you may choose whichever flowers will suit me as I am now. If possible, I would like them to match the dyed cloth. Tuli had come a long way with her hairpins. They were so much more fancier than when she had first started making them, but Mine's smile and the way they spoke about her next order brought me straight back to old times. It helped that Mine's voice was almost entirely unchanged. Next to Tuli, she looked 5, maybe 6 years younger. Their age gap seemed much larger than before, but in my eyes, they were as close as they'd always been. Feeling tickled that Mine was paying extra attention to me, I met her gaze and thought about what patterns and colors would suit her most. Preparing the best cloth I could was the one thing I could do for her right now. I'd need to knuckle down to make sure her summer clothes are finished in time. Oh, here we go. Hold on. What time? How much longer? 35 minutes. Wow, those were short. Those were short. Tuli, engagement circumstances. Oh, here we go. This might be it. A sales bonus story for Part 5, Volume 4, set before the Gutenberg's trip to Kernberger. It depicts Tuli and Lutz's view on marriage from their unusual position as once poor commoners now working for rich merchants. Enjoy their rushed engagement and a look into how such arrangements are made in the lower city. It's a big family gathering. I wrote this story in response to the countless requests for more information about how Tuli and Lutz ended up together, and because so many readers wanted to know more about lower city engagements. Break time, Ganella said. Everyone hand off your work. But I was so close to getting done. Nuh-uh, Ganella shook her head and smiled. Not once have you said that and actually meant it. I carefully set down my hairpin, which was only halfway done, and went to the break room with the others. Our store contained a lot of expensive tools and cloth, so we weren't allowed to eat or even bring food to our workstation. I wanted to finish it all in one go, I grumbled. The Lahandras can't take breaks until the Laharos do, remember? You're about to come of age. It would do you well to consider not just your hairpin orders, but the future of the workshop as a whole. Ganella was my senior, so my only option was to concede. She was right anyway. Prioritizing my work for Lady Rosemine meant I usually neglected other things that needed my attention. I waited as she opened the door, and at once we were met with complaining. He won't talk about anything else. It's the worst. I turned to the source of the noise. Leonie, another Laharo. She had participated in the winter coming-of-age ceremony before taking 3 days off to spend with her family. You seem anxious, Leonie, I said. Did something happen? I keep telling my dad that I don't want to think about marriage yet, but that hasn't stopped him from bringing man after man to see me. Every day I was at home, he brought me somebody's son to deal with. Made me wish I'd never gone back at all. Wasn't it kind of him to give you a choice, one of the others chimed in. My dad picked my fiancé for me. I didn't even know the first thing about the guy. But I was already seeing someone, Leonie countered. If my dad were as kind as you think, he wouldn't have put pressure on my boyfriend's family and forced him to get engaged to another woman. Well, that's what all dads do when they don't approve of the guy their daughters sing. Mine did the same thing. Okay, this is interesting. The engaged among us began sharing their experiences. They all seemed to have remarkable stories to tell. Oh, Tuli, you're coming of age this summer, right? Your parents must be on your back about engagements by now. Yeah, this is around when it starts to dominate every conversation, Leonie said. My mom and dad sure had a lot to say to me. I nodded. Leonie and I were both considered old enough for talks of engagement. If you wanted to get married 2 or 3 years after coming of age, then you had to find a partner before your ceremony. Come on, Tuli, which business is your suitor from? He's a Laharo, right? Is your dad listening to your preferences, or are you having someone forced on you? Those questions aren't exactly relevant to me. Conversations of this sort reminded me that I lived in a completely different world from my colleagues. The only men my dad and mom could introduce me to were soldiers or people involved with the clothing industry. I would never be introduced to the son of a rich merchant, and strengthening family alliances wasn't exactly a priority. Or exactly a priority for us. I put on a smile and gave the vaguest response I could. My dad is okay with hearing me out, but I don't know how much he's going to listen. To be honest, marriage is still totally beyond me. Right? Leonie said, my dad is all about his store. Though, this is kind of strange. I always assumed you were one of those girls who did everything their parents tell them to. I never thought you'd fight back. Her eyes sparkled with excitement that she'd found an ally, but I doubted we were on the same page. I understand not wanting to think about marriage, but isn't it important that you find someone? Ganella asked, eyeing me with worry as Leonie gleefully took my hands. You had another weird guy approach you just recently, didn't you? Master Otto was worried sick. What? When did this happen? What? Again, she was right. One man had approached me because I made Lady Rosemine's hairpins, though my being from the poor side of town meant he proposed with the most patronizing expression imaginable. Great, I wonder who the guy was. Is it someone we know? I consulted Master Otto and asked him to shoo the guy away, but more were showing up the closer I got to coming of age. You're dating that Lutz guy anyway, right? Why not get engaged to him? What? Isn't she older than him? That's, out of the question. No, I wouldn't say necessarily. He's only younger than her by 1 year, or probably less than a year, because I think, isn't his baptism in spring? Because he and mine had the same baptism, and I think that it was spring when they had theirs. So it isn't that far off, actually. It's only, one season between the summer one and the spring one. No, two. I'm sorry. Besides, her parents have the final say. Tula could be obsessed with him and it wouldn't change a thing. I wore an evasive smile as everyone fought to say their piece. Lutz and I weren't actually together, but our parents were pretty much guaranteed to set us up with each other. My heart really belonged to Mr. Benno, though my hopes of dating him had been dashed as soon as they revealed themselves. Acknowledging or denying anything the other said would only lead to weird misinterpretations. The best thing I could do was wait for our lunch break to end. Over the winter, despite my reluctance to even think about marriage, my engagement to Lutz was set in stone. Mom told me the news when I returned home to inform her she was allowed to go to the temple for the measuring. Lutz had also been told about our engagement. He shot me a concerned glance as we made our way back to our respective stores. Tuli, I get that our parents have already made up their minds, but are you sure about this? My mom said we could come home so rarely that the next time we see them, they're going to gather our families together and make the whole thing official. He was probably asking me now so we could speak without any interference from our parents. In truth, Lutz had noticed my crush on Mr. Benno before it had even crossed my mind. He had already knew about my heartbreak and gave me advice whenever I asked for it. As it stood, he was worried about how I might feel about getting married to someone else. This can't be easy for him. He's fully aware that I love someone else. An unrequited love, and someone he knows! Oh, his boss! Oh my god, that's freaking awkward! Even more awkward is that Mr. Benno doesn't even know about it. I knew this would happen, I said. I went home this winter instead of staying at the store, right? I'd heard that Lady Rosamund wouldn't be returning to the temple, and I needed to prepare for my own coming-of-age ceremony. My dress had to be good enough for a Laharl of the Gilberta Company to wear with pride. Nobody at the workshop can match my hairpin-making skills, but my sewing is average at best. Of course, I meant average by Mrs. Karina's standards, which put me above the vast majority of the girls in my area. I wanted to devote more time to my sewing. There was enough competition that it wouldn't be easy for me to be trusted with Lady Rosamund's clothes, but I always ended up focusing on hairpins. They were the one thing keeping me in contact with my sister. I wouldn't let anyone take that luxury away from me. During my time at home, Mom told me what the other girls my age have been up to, I said. I still don't want to think about marriage, but many of them are already engaged or at least dating someone. Yeah, things at home are pretty different from how they are at the store. No other Laharls or Lahandras at the Gilberta Company were from the poor side of the city. Or poor south of the city. Everyone at work was kind to me, but it always stung a little when something drew attention to my upbringing and education. At the same time, I'd spent enough years immersed in the world of merchants that I sometimes found it hard to relate to how things were done back home. Les was just about the only one who understood what I was going through. Well, the one thing I made clear was that I didn't want to marry a soldier, I noted. That led to a discussion about who would understand my situation and support my career. And the only option we could think of was you. You're older than me, though. Does that not bother you? The ideal time for a woman to marry was between her coming of age and when she turned 20. Men, on the other hand, usually waited until they were older than 20 and earning a stable income. Most women married men who were 3 to 10 years older than them as a result. It was rare to see a wife who was older than her husband. Okay, that makes sense now. You can pay the bride price, right? I asked. That was a decisive factor. Oh, that. Because of all the trips I make, I get paid a traveling fee on top of my usual salary. Then there's my income from the plant paper guild and whatnot. I don't even spend much on those trips, so I end up saving most of what I earn anyway. So he's got a sizable amount saved, more than likely. It was easy for the Harls to build up savings because their stores covered most of their living costs. Les's trip meant he got paid extra on top of that and wouldn't need to buy clothes for visiting stores on the rich side of the city. As for me, I spent a fair amount of money on necessities and clothes to match my coworkers. So you won't mind going ahead with this, Les asked? It sounds better than marrying a soldier. You understand my circumstances, and our families get along well. I can't think of anyone who would suit me better. I wasn't jumping for joy at the idea, but Lutz wasn't to blame for that. I wasn't too keen on the thought of becoming a wife in general. On the bright side, because he was younger than me, moving things forward wouldn't mean rushing straight into marriage. I was glad to have a little more time to think things through. I also wanted to ask about Mr. Benno, Lutz ventured. Just hearing that man's name soured my mood and made my heart ache. I didn't want to speak about him, not that I had much of a choice. He won't ever see me that way. I mean, think about it. We don't suit each other at all. I can't even imagine what our married life would be like. Do you really think I could succeed as the planting company's matriarch? Dunno. I think you would find it tough to begin with, and you'd make all sorts of small, unexpected mistakes. Not to mention you need to help him run the store. You'd have to give up on a lot of the jobs you do now. Being the owner of the planting company's wife would make me its matriarch, not as seamstress as I was now. I would end up in the same situation as when I first joined the store, completely unsure how to act. Everyone would expect me to work for the planting company's sake, think about its future, and support my husband. I would also need to quit making hairpins. Even if Mr. Benno told me I could continue, others would surely object. Just wanting to marry someone isn't enough, I said. I admire Mr. Benno, love him even, but I won't let those emotions control me. I understand all too clearly that he and I don't belong together. No matter how deeply I care for him, he won't even look at me the same way. Surprise me! Okay, No matter how deeply I care for him, he won't ever look at me the same way. It wasn't like Mr. Benno reciprocated my feelings, and even if he had, the problems destined to follow our marriage would completely overshadow our romance. They weren't the sort of problems our love would be able to conquer. But with you, Lutz, there's nothing for me to complain about. I already know our families work well together, and you know as much about being a merchant as I do. It makes me wonder if you're okay with this arrangement. Are your parents sure they want to go through with it? Lutz waved away the question. Your mom and dad were celebrating. You're lucky to have found someone who matches your salary and understands your situation, they told me. Don't let her get away. Mine said more or less the same thing. It's hard to marry up or down in status. The dowries and such would probably bankrupt our one family or the other. That is true. And like I said, they both know about the situation about mine. It's better this way anyway. And the problems wouldn't end with the ceremony. Both sides would need to get involved when the couple had children, during baptisms, and so on. Neither mine nor Lutz's family had the capital to meet the expectations of anyone working for the Plantain or Gilberta companies. But that wasn't what I meant, I said. I wanted to know if you're okay with marrying me despite knowing who I'm in love with. I gave it a lot of thought and it doesn't bother me. Have you not considered marrying into a merchant family? For obvious reasons, a merchant girl wouldn't want to marry into your family, but you could always marry into hers, right? You have years until you're expected to take a wife. Marrying me will deprive you of so many better opportunities. Any decent merchants would care too much about familial ties to entrust their daughter to such a poor household. But absorbing Lutz into their family was another story entirely. Out of the question, Lutz said, shaking his head without even pausing to think. I would need to join their store, right? If not for Lady Rosemine, I wouldn't even have made it this far. I'll never work for any store but the Plantain Company. Lutz had made paper with mine, sold the techniques to Mr. Benno, made more paper in the temple's workshop, and then spread printing and paper-making technologies to other provinces. They were great accomplishments, but working in the temple and taking orphans to the forest weren't important to other merchant households. And as Lutz would refuse to reveal anything about Lady Rosemine or the printing industry in general, he wouldn't hold much value to them. So you don't mind marrying me then, I asked? I mean, we're in the same boat. What other choice do we have? Right? We weren't in love, we just happened to be the most convenient partners for each other. Still, it's so easy to imagine a life with him. We wouldn't need to push ourselves or try to act more important than we really were. Instead, we could both continue to live normally. Mom said we can wait until you come of age or until we feel the time is right, I said. Lutz was away each year from spring to autumn, and my own workload shot up as merchants from the duchies came to browse our city's wares. We were also both underage. It seemed wise to wait for when we were of age and more comfortable with our new roles at work. Tuli, what are you hoping for? Would you rather we get married soon? If not, we have enough money to wait. Ganella's advice echoed through my mind. Our marriage can wait, but I want us to get engaged sooner rather than later. Really? How come? Well, my next words were hard to utter. I couldn't shake the fear that Lutz might tell my dad, but I steeled my resolve and said them anyway. Being from the poor part of the city and all, men see me as their plaything. Some of them are a little forceful with me. Others pursue me even when their parents aren't interested. That kind of thing. Huh? Are you serious? I went to Master Otto, who promised to speak to them for me, so I didn't think much more about it. But I work for Lady Rosemine, and my coming of age is drawing near, so I worry what merchants from other duchies might say, and what might happen if more men show up to bother me. The sooner we get engaged, the better, I think. And I think it'd actually be better if you got married sooner rather than later. Just for the same situation, because you two being engaged might not deter some of these people, especially if they're merchants from other duchies. It might not deter them in the slightest. I mean, look at the whole Lestalot, Wilfried, and Rosemine situation. That's a deterrent. That's one right there, where that didn't deter Lestalot in the slightest that those two were engaged. To merchants, engagements and marriages were akin to contracts between families. If a merchant started making moves on a woman who was already engaged, then the Merchants Guild would get involved. It was a problematic situation to end up in, which was why few men had bothered to risk it. I could see why Ganella and Master Otto wanted me to hurry things along. Couldn't you have told me that sooner? Lux exclaimed. You haven't mentioned this to your dad, I assume. If you had, he'd already be rushing to get us engaged. He'd go crazy and start picking fights with everyone. No thanks. Yeah, Gunter would definitely do that. He'd find out who the heck was doing it, march right up to them, and punch them in the face for it. That's what he would do. I can actually picture that happening. And I do not blame him in the slightest on that. Dad was really strong and quick to act, exactly what you would expect from a soldier. I could always rely on him when things got tough, but I needed to be careful of what I said to him. One careless remark could make him go berserk. Les must have understood that too, because he seemed to be at a loss for words. I get how you feel, but isn't Lady Rosemine way scarier, he asked when he eventually recovered. I don't even want to imagine what she'd do if she found out some weirdos got involved with you. Knowing her, she wouldn't hesitate to use her authority to crush the life out of them. I know, she would. No, she would send her knights after them. That's what she would do. If she couldn't get involved personally, she would send her knights or Ferdinand after them. That's what she would do. And they would beg for mercy. Oh my god, I would love to see that myself. Let's explain that he had seen Lady Rosemine crush several nobles when they tried to act against her Gutenbergs. And those were just the instances he witnessed. It was my turn to fall silent. My sister was just as passionate as Dad, and just as prone to going on rampages. Oh, even more so. She didn't have his strength, but that didn't matter when she had all the political power of a member of the Archducal family, and all the mana to match it and go beyond, too. Even if she wasn't, even if she didn't have to act as a member of the Archducal family, she could just use her mana and crush anybody she wants. I sure am loved, huh? I said, averting my eyes and scratching my cheek. It warmed my heart to know that Lady Rosemine would protect me no matter what. Though I wasn't sure what might happen if she grew angry or impulsive. She was as much of a handful as always. Oh, yeah. Eesh, now I'm nervous. Want to get all this engagement business over and done with before my trip? I appreciate the thought, but isn't that kind of rushing things? Yeah, but we'll only be sharing some wine together. It's not like we need to start preparing to get married right away. We're going to be hard-pressed to find a time we're both free otherwise. Les was preparing for his trip to Kernberger while I was about to have my hands full of Lady Rosemine's measuring. Not to mention my schedule was packed with hairpins to be made for the merchants arriving in the summer. True, I said. Mom was pretty relaxed about our engagement for the same reason. If you want to get those creeps out of your hair, then we should sort this out before I head to Kernberger. I'll go speak with Mr. Otto and the others. Les spoke with Master Otto and Mr. Benno, which led to a family discussion with Dad, which culminated in the decision to accelerate our engagement. We waited until the Earth Day before Lutz was due to leave, then made our way home together chatting about Lady Rosemine all the while. She was currently away for spring prayer. I think this goes without saying, but we need to keep our engagement under wraps, Lutz began. We don't want a repeat of the Johann situation where she got so excited that she gave a blessing and passed out. Wait. Oh, yeah, when he made the letter types for the first time. She did get so excited that she kind of passed out. There are bound to be scholars wherever she goes, and we'll end up doubly screwed if she starts pestering us for answers. We sure would. She'd make it so much harder for us to do our jobs. If we're going to tell her, we should do so in advance of the Star Festival. How about 3 days before? If we break the news on the day of, she might go wild and cause a scene during the ceremony. 3 days should give her enough time to calm down. Yeah, it makes sense. Even if she gets a fever, that should give her enough time to recover, and she won't have enough time to do anything crazy. Our engagement would stretch on longer than most, so we decided to tell Lady Rosemary either right before we got married or whenever she outright asked about it. We said as much to our respective bosses and asked them not to let her find out sooner. I trusted them to hold their tongues. They would file at most if she went on another rampage, be it through an increased workload or the ruin of existing sales. Speaking of Lady Rosemary, where are you keeping that charm she gave us, Lutz asked, indicating his on his wrist. I took a deep breath. Inside a box. Mom went to the orphanage director's chamber shortly after we received them. I thought Dad would get jealous if he saw me wearing mine, so I stashed it in my room. You might want to wear it. I'd assumed that Dad would get a charm for spring prayer, and then I could take mine out then, only it had completely slipped my mind. You really should wear it. Lady Rosemary made our charms to keep us safe. You're right, I'll put it on as soon as I get home. The city was peaceful. I doubted I would need one of Lady Rosemary's charms, but as she'd gone out of her way to make them, there might have been trouble brewing between nobles that we didn't know about. Welcome back, both of you, Carla exclaimed with a broad smile as soon as we opened the door. We've been waiting. Let's get this show on the road, shall we? The rest of Lutz's family had gathered as well. Mr. Deed, Zasha with his family, Steve with his fiancée, and Ralph were all right behind Carla. Oh boy, that's going to be awkward! We have a whole feast ready for you, Mom said, turning from in front of the hearth. She insisted that I come quick, but the circumstances made me tense up. I spent ages gathering my resolve for today. We'd only be sharing fruit wine, but I could feel my heart racing. Does this mean Lutz is going to be my older brother, Camille asked? Happier about the engagement than anyone. Of course he's going to be happy about it. He gets Lutz as a brother. Lutz brought him all sorts of picture books and toys, and having a brother-in-law in the planting company would do wonders for Camille when he joined as an apprentice. I mean, yeah, he could introduce them because you're family now. You're going to be family soon. Ralph tousled my little brother's hair. How about having me as your brother instead, I won't be gone half the year, and I can take you to the forest whenever you want. Huh? No thanks. Lutz is way better. If I went with you, I wouldn't be able to play with Conrad, Dirk, and the others. Nobody else in our little part of the city had access to Karata or any of Lady Rosemary's other toys, so Camille was only able to enjoy them with others when he met with the temple kids in the forest. Besides, ain't you moving to Ingo's workshop when you come of age this spring? Stieg asked, clapping Raph on the shoulder and cackling. You won't have time to go to the forest with Camille. How long are you going to keep acting like a kid, oh? Right? This is why Nana keeps getting on your case. Or Nana. Nana? Is she Ralph's girlfriend? Oh, Ralph is trying to get in so that he can be Tuli's husband instead. Nope. Not happening, dude. Give up. It seemed to me that pretty much everyone was focused on relationships, marriage, and moving to a workshop once they come of age. And I didn't know that Ralph was going to Ingo's workshop. That's going to be a little awkward. Lutz and I were technically in the same boat, but the others seemed so much more mature for some reason. Can you guys work out the dowry? Lutz asked Mr. Deed. Tuli and I can take care of the other payments. What other payments? As Laharls, we have some merchant customers we need to follow for our stores, but you don't need to worry about all that. From there, the conversation turned to our future living arrangements. You better act quick. If you don't sort your accommodations out soon, then you're going to run out of options. Zasha and his wife had apparently found it a nightmare trying to secure a new home after their engagement. Stieg, on the other hand, had experienced no trouble at all. Well, we're Laharls, Lutz shot back. If we ask, we can get ourselves a place above one of our stores. Seriously? You Laharl merchants are the worst, Sasha groaned. He tried to grind a fist against Lutz's head, but Lutz had grown so much that it wasn't easy. I couldn't help but chuckle as I watched them. In any case, we're just getting engaged for now, I said. Marriage won't be on the cards for a long while yet, so sorting out our accommodations can wait. If you're not in a hurry to get married, then why rush your engagement, Ralph asked, taking a sharp tone. It must have hurt his pride that Lutz, his younger brother, was beating him to the punch. Lutz is way too young for this. He's even younger than Stieg was, and people said he got to get engaged too soon. We're rushing it because I want to, I retorted. Lutz agreed for my sake. Does that mean... That's enough chit-chat, Carla interjected, cutting her son short. Come here, Tuli, the wine's ready. I guess we're going to get to see how engagements work in the lower city. I nodded and went over to them, leaving Ralph with his mouth hanging open. Dad and Mr. Deed were facing each other across the table. Right, this is where things get serious, Carla said. Tuli, stand next to your dad. Let's come stand here. A great big smile on her face, Carla plunked a wooden cup down on the center of the table. She handed a jug of fruit wine to her husband, who accepted it and turned to Dad. "To the start of Thule and Lutz's new bond," he said. Mr. D poured some wine into the cup. Then he waited as Dad picked up his own wine and did the same. It didn't escape my notice that Dad was frowning at Lutz the whole time. What? What are you frowning about, dude? This is your best case scenario, essentially. Because like I said, they both know about mine's secret. It's better that someone in that little inner circle of y'all's is able to marry your daughter. Because kind of hard to keep this kind of secret from your husband, you know? Dude, what are you frowning for? Lutz was next. He took the jug and added to the cup. The wine represented a promise between the two families involved in the engagement. It was pretty much a vow between men, so even as one of the people getting married, the most I could do was watch. Once the cup was full, Dad picked it up and took a hearty swig. Then he held it out to Lutz. "If you break my daughter's heart, I'll make you regret it." "Come on, Dad," I said. "Was that really necessary? This is meant to be serious," Carla exclaimed. Our solemn mood vanished in an instant. Dad was unfazed and refused to change his tone. He put the cup down with a clatter before pushing it in Lutz's direction. "Yeah, I can understand what Gunter said that for. He's protective of his daughter. You can't blame him on that one." Lutz accepted the wine, not at all surprised. I was so grateful to be marrying someone already used to my dad acting out. Anyone else would probably have taken his words to heart. "I won't let you down," Lutz said, then drank the rest of the wine, and with that, our engagement was official. Food was put on the table, cups were filled with wine, and plates were handed out as everyone started to clap and congratulate us. It was time to feast. "Lutz," Carla said, "oh, I'm so glad we settled all this before you married a merchant girl or moved who knows where and never came back." "At last I can relax," Mom added. "Thule, Lutz, keep an eye on your jobs and figure out when you want to get married." The pair knocked their cups together with huge smiles. Dad was slouched in the corner nursing his drink. "I still don't agree with this," he grumbled. "It's way too soon." "Stop being ridiculous," Carla snapped. "How can you say that when you just approved the engagement?" "If you weren't on board, Mr. Gunter, you shouldn't have mixed wine," Zasha said. "I thought you came to an agreement over the winter." "It's way too late to complain," Zeke sighed. Then he turned to Lutz. "Man, are you going to have that guy breathing down your neck for the rest of your life? Are you going to be alright?" The three of them looked totally exasperated. Meanwhile, Zasha's and Zeke's respective partners watched with smiles. Ralph was the only one who agreed with Dad. "I know how you feel, Mr. Gunter. Lutz isn't good enough for her." "Lutz ain't the problem. Thule's too young to be engaged." Dad slammed his cup down. "I know it had to happen, but I'm not happy about it." "Dude, she's going to be coming of age in, summer at this point? She's going to be 16. Hello? That's usually when girls get engaged and or get married. Or that's the earliest they, Anyway. "Gunter," Mr. Deed said, his frustration clear on his face. "How old was Effa when you started pursuing her? How old was she when you got engaged? And when you were engaged, all you ever spoke about was marrying her right away. I shouldn't need to say what happened next, but you..." "What? What? What happened? I want to know! Come on, tell me!" "That's enough," Dad cried. "I won't say another word." Would Effa smack you or something for that? Or did her dad get on to you? Dad and Mr. Deed went way back, so the protest stopped then and there. I didn't hear a single complaint from Dad in the days and weeks that followed. Back at the workshop, I waited until our next break to share the news. Now that I was engaged to Lutz, other men would finally leave me alone. "Morning, Leonie," I said. "Oh, you got engaged? Huh?" "I mean, yes, but how did you know?" She hadn't even given me a chance to say it. I must have looked more surprised than she did. "He gave you that wristband, right?" Leonie pointed at Lady Rosemine's charm. Lutz had reminded me about it, but that was all. "A lot of guys have been giving their girls jewelry lately. It all started with that apprentice of the Merchants Guild who got engaged to a minor noble. You know about her, right? The girl from the Offmer Company?" "Wait, what? What? Wait, I thought that she was supposed to be his mistress, not his... Is she going to be married to Daniel's brother? And now I want to know. Give us the info! Please! I want to know now. Now you've opened another can of worms. As it turned out, this trend among merchants had started with Frida wearing a necklace given to her by her noble fiancé. Now I want to know! so much. Come on, tell me. I know that sounds stupid, but I want to know. I want to know who it is. Is it Daniel's brother that was, in the contract with her to begin with? Is it somebody else? And if so, is it going to be her... Dang, if it's him, which wife is she going to be? Is it going to be a second wife? Because I'm assuming he's got a wife already. Because he has to have her as his mistress. Otherwise, I think he probably would have taken her as his... I don't freaking know at this point. Nobles make gems to match their partner's mana, but as commoners don't have mana, guys have been matching their partner's hair or eye color instead. But Frida's got mana, so I mean, he could have matched her mana, so... Necklaces, rings, bracelets, and even brooches. All accessories are fair game as long as they don't get in the way of the recipient's work. That was all news to me. If the trend had started after Frida got engaged, then it had to be pretty recent. Great work, Tuli, Leone said with a smile. That should keep those creeps away. I tried to smile back, but I was too focused on the charm. Would it seriously stop merchant boys from bothering me? What? We didn't even need to rush into our engagement! Oh my god. I screamed on the inside. If my dad found out, he would cackle and shout, Great! Let's cancel the engagement then! Now wanting to put the others through another of his rampages, I concluded that it was probably best not to tell anyone. Oh, here we go, the last one. How much further? Okay, I'll just keep going. I only got one more left. Letizia, my first spring prayer. A previously unpublished story from the online collection that takes place during Spring Prayer in Part 5, Volume 4. How does Letizia, an Arensbach Archduke candidate not at all associated with the temple, respond to being asked to participate in religious ceremonies? Ferdinand, Eckert, and Justice are excited to have a chance to leave Arensbach's castle. The story shows what Arensbach nobles think about the temple. The ingredients Ferdinand gathers are later given to Rosamund in Part 5, Volume 6. Lady Letizia has been instructed to participate in Spring Prayer, Sergius explained. Come again? Roared my head attendant, Roswitha, making her fury known. What on earth is Lord Ferdinand thinking? Has he lost his wits? Roswitha's outrage did not surprise me. Performing religious ceremonies was the duty of those in the temple who bore noble blood, without being nobles themselves. Asking an Archduke candidate to participate was inconceivable. Lord Ferdinand might have been accustomed to such duties from his time as Ehrenfest's high priest, but that wasn't how we did things in Arensbach. Sergius cast his eyes down and pressed his lips together as both Roswitha's son and an attendant of Lord Ferdinand, he was frequently tasked with liaising between them. Oh, he's Roswitha's son. Oh my god, considering what we know happens to her, he's going to be devastated. Lord Ferdinand says she would be safer there than in the castle. Lady Detlinde seemingly intends to have her take part in replenishing the foundational magic. As I understood it, mana replenishment was meant to be done by Archduke candidates who had learned to control their mana, not by those too young to have even enrolled at the Royal Academy. Sergius recognized our confusion and tried to elaborate. To better supply their duchy with mana, Ehrenfest's Archduke candidates took part in mana replenishment and religious ceremonies from the moment they were baptized. Lady Detlinde had apparently heard as much from the Academy, which was why she had wanted me to participate as well. Lord Ferdinand informed me that in Ehrenfest, newly baptized candidates rely on face stones full of mana and support from their guardians. He seemed unsure that Lady Detlinde or Lady Georgine would, or even could, provide such aid. Lady Detlinde had grown much harsher since becoming Arensbach's interim Abb and learning more of her duchy circumstances. She would never give me a gentle guidance. Most of all, Sergius continued, only registered members of the Archducal family can enter the replenishment hall. That means Lady Detlinde, Lady Georgine, and Lady Letizia, to be more precise. Lord Ferdinand worries that Lady Letizia might be forced to provide more mana than she can endure and collapse, in which case nobody will be able to rescue her. The idea of being alone with Lady Detlinde or in any room where my retainers could not reach me was terrifying enough to make bumps arise on my skin. Lord Ferdinand is still waiting to be starbound, meaning he is not yet a proper citizen of Arensbach, but Lady Detlinde forces religious ceremony on him nonetheless. He says he cannot predict what Lady Letizia might be driven to do in his absence. Lady Detlinde forced the ceremony upon him, I asked. She had told us he had volunteered to help because of Arensbach's mana concern in the wake of the Abb's passing. Lord Ferdinand was exceptionally surprised to receive her instruction and asked whether it was customary in Arensbach to force guests to perform religious ceremonies. He was also upset to learn that Ehrenfest's reformed temple was considered no better than our reviled one. It is regrettable, but because of Lady Detlinde, he has come to see our duchy as unfortunately backward. Most of Lady Detlinde's duties were being thrust upon Lord Ferdinand. They were tasks meant for an ob, interim or otherwise, not for a man who is both a guest and a groom. For her own sake, he maintains that Lady Letizia should participate in spring prayer despite any reservations she might have, and that she should use the opportunity to start learning to control her mana. That is not an order, though. The final decision is up to the two of you. It seemed that Lord Ferdinand had already begun his own preparations. Roswitha frowned, most likely torn between wanting me to avoid religious ceremonies and wanting to keep me safe. I glanced at my white plush shoe mill, which provided me comfort whenever I needed it. Because of Lady Rosebud and Lord Ferdinand, it contained recorded messages from my mother and father and Jerwonkel. Lady Rosebud had also given me a shoe mill that spoke in her voice and instructed Lord Ferdinand to praise me when appropriate. It had revolutionized my study sessions and served as a constant reminder of how much they both cared about me. Roswitha, let us take part in spring prayer, I said. I trust that Lord Ferdinand has my best interests at heart. Together with my retainers, I started preparing for my very first spring prayer. Lady Detlinde had told us to wear formal attire, not blue robes, so that our generosity would be attributed to the archducal family and not the temple. Roswitha was glad that I wouldn't need to wear the same clothes as the blue priest, but Lord Ferdinand thought it was merely an excuse on Lady Detlinde's part to protect her from being accused of relegating us to the temple. Sergius had passed along his message and informed us that as we were going to farming towns, we should wear clothes that we wouldn't mind getting dirty. Does he want us to wear lower quality clothing in front of our citizens, I asked. That sounds far too improper, Roswitha mused, especially when, as Lady Detlinde said, we are acting as members of the archducal family. True, but he did say you would have to wear clothes that you wouldn't mind getting dirty. Do you really want to wear those clothes and get them dirty? I doubt it. You're going to farming towns. It's going to be dirty. Can't really avoid that. That sounded reasonable enough, so I elected to dress formally for the first date, and what a blunder that was! I could see now why Lord Ferdinand advised against it. There were no ivory roads in the farming towns, meaning we had to tread upon bare earth. It was my first time setting foot on ground so completely devoid of grass. Some parts were too squishy to hold my weight and made a mess of my shoes. While he did say that you should wear clothes that you would not mind getting dirty, he speaks from experience. While others were so rocky and uneven that I found it hard to get anywhere. It had even rained at one point, soaking my attire and covering the hem of my skirt with mud. Roswitha cleaned my clothes, lamenting how dirty they were. Tomorrow I should do as Lord Ferdinand advised and wear clothes that I do not mind dirtying. In each town we went to, Lord Ferdinand gave the farmers manna from the temple's large chalice. Both the divine instrument and the ceremony were beautiful and new to me. None of the nobles in our company had seen the religious ceremonies performed in our duchy before, so they could not help but let out sighs of awe. Once we visited our fourth town, we headed to its winter mansion to settle in for the night. Ahrensbach was large enough that we needed to send our chefs and attendants ahead of us, as they were moving by carriage. They would never have arrived on time otherwise. I noticed that nobles and commoners had very distinct manners of dress, I mused that evening as I ate with Lord Ferdinand and the others. I was shocked to see the dirty and, quite frankly, miserable attire that so many wore. Did they never bathe? As it was my first time leaving the castle, near enough everything was new to me. I would assume they wore their cleanest clothes for our visit, and even those were of much worse quality than the clothes worn by Ehrenfest's farmers, Lord Ferdinand replied. Ahrensbach's farmers are in dire straits indeed. Lord Ferdinand spent the rest of our meal answering my questions. Then when we were done, he looked around the table and said I would appreciate the assistance of everyone but the knights, so that we might finish replenishing Ahrensbach's central district tomorrow. Excuse me? Do you expect us to participate in the ceremonies as well? Lord Ferdinand raised an eyebrow at the surprised nobles. Do not tell me you all shared Lady Detlinde's belief that I, an Ehrenfest noble, could supply all of Ahrensbach on my own. The retainers gathered around the table had all criticized Lady Detlinde for making Lord Ferdinand, a guest, perform spring prayer. They had said that her actions were ignorant and tyrannical, so it was beyond them to refuse to participate themselves. From the next day onward, the scholars and attendants were made to help out. Lord Ferdinand and 6 others placed their hands on the rim of the large chalice set atop the table. Lord Ferdinand was the only one to chant the prayer, but everyone could contribute their mana. Are you well, Roswitha? Worry not, my lady. I simply used too much of my mana. Although the scholars and attendants took turns to participate, Roswitha had emerged from performing 2 ceremonies in one day, with a look of complete and utter exhaustion. I thought she had done well, but Lord Ferdinand seemed unfazed even after performing the ceremony 4 times. I mean, the guy's got a ton of mana. Of course he's not going to be fine. As much as he insisted that it became less tiring the more one became used to the process, I doubt it was that simple. My future adoptive father was far more fantastic than I'd ever imagined. As of tomorrow, I would be helping out as well, though I would need to use phase stones to keep up with everyone. Lord Ferdinand assured me I would find as even Ehrenfest's blue priest could manage it, but I was terribly worried nonetheless. I mean, yeah, you're kind of expecting a bit too much for her. It was my first religious ceremony. Lord Ferdinand told me to press a small phase stone containing his mana against the rim of the chalice, then cover my hand with his as if to prevent my escape. As he instructed me to push the mana out of the stone, I couldn't help but notice the coldness of his touch. O goddess of water Flutrain, bringer of healing and change. O 12 goddesses who serve by her side, the goddess of earth Geduld has been freed from the god of life Avaglaib. I pray that you grant your younger sister the power to birth new life. Lord Ferdinand prayed, and mana started moving from the face stone to the chalice. I also felt mana other than my own, and pushed against the face stone to keep it away from me. That will do, Lord Ferdinand said, taking the face stone from me. I glanced up at him with a start, and realized the ceremony was complete. My head spun, and sparks darted across my vision. I put my head in my hands to do 2 days to even move. Pardon me, Lady Letizia, said one of my knights before picking me up and placing me atop a high beast. It was not unusual to be rendered immobile by one's first mana replenishment, it seemed. My retainers had also expended an enormous amount of mana, so we postponed tomorrow's ceremony to drink potions and recover ourselves. I was glad to hear that we would not need to take after Lord Ferdinand and perform ceremony after ceremony without a break. Doing this every day sounds outright impossible. I drank the rejuvenation potion Broswitha gave me and took some time to rest. Sergius came to check on me in the meantime. Lady Letizia, how are you faring? Your first mana replenishment must have been tiring. Indeed, I said, I can barely move at all. Lady Detlinde would have forced you to participate without the aid of a phase stone. Now that I understood the burden mana replenishment placed on one's body, I recognized just how much my life had been a risk. If Lord Ferdinand had not stopped Lady Detlinde, if I had refused to participate in spring prayer, the thought alone sent a shiver down my spine. Should you feel that your mana is not recovering fast enough, I would recommend these, Sergius said, drawing my attention to several vials. These are special rejuvenation potions made by Lord Ferdinand. I cannot vouch for the taste, they truly are wretched, but their effectiveness cannot be beat. Sergius went on to explain that the potions had come from Ehrenfest before our departure. Lady Rosamund sent them with a letter stressing that although they taste so horrid you might mistake them for being a prank or malicious trick, they really do work. Their sharpness is a small price to pay for their potency. I tried one last night and can verify her claims. It would also seem that these potions are an improved version of the recipe. In the past, they tasted even worse. As it turned out, Lady Rosamund had once survived on these extra repulsive potions while performing Ehrenfest's spring prayer. Could these religious ceremonies be the reason she is always so unwell? No, I don't think so. I tried one of the potions mostly out of curiosity. It truly was awful. A foul stench hit the back of my throat and my tongue tingled from the bitterness. Could anything taste worse than this? Who knows? Sewage? Maybe? Did the Ehrenfest Archducal family really drink potions so vile while performing their ceremonies? I could not even begin to imagine how bizarre their duchy must be. What is Lord Ferdinand doing today? Our 3 guests from Ehrenfest show no signs of exhaustion whatsoever, likely due to their experience with these ceremonies. They have gone to gather ingredients with the knights, told not to participate, so they cannot go anywhere without Ahrensbach nobles. They are gathering ingredients? I stared at Sergius, taken aback by his answer. That was normally a task for knights who specialized in hunting fey beasts and harvesting fey plants. I understood that scholars with a particularly strong interest in rare ingredients sometimes participated, but an archduke candidate who was performing religious ceremonies? It would seem he wishes to make the most of this opportunity. I was invited to go with them, but as we will resume the ceremonies tomorrow, I could not muster the motivation. Just as his attendant was more excited for this trip than anyone. Sergius got a distant look in his eyes. I consider it a blessing that I was not expected to be an attendant in Ehrenfest. It was unbelievable to me that an attendant of all people was taking the lead in their ingredient gathering. Perhaps being involved in religious ceremonies each year allowed retainers of all professions to develop rather durable physiques. On every single day of rest, the Ehrenfest trio went out to gather ingredients. None of their outings reached us through the nights, news of their outings reached us through the nights accompanying them, who spoke about them at length over breakfast and dinner. I never thought we would find Varaners. Me neither, they bloom only on the night of Flutrain. and that's all seemed pleased about the rare and valuable ingredients they had stumbled upon. Vereners, I asked, what are those? Justice leaped at the opportunity to answer in an exceptionally bright mood. Lord Ferdinand added to his explanation and even went through the kinds of potions and magic tools in which they were used. Seeing everyone listen with rapt attention, I assumed it had not been the knight's idea to gather these particular ingredients. It struck me as odd that the Iron Fist trio knew more about Aronsbach's flora than we did. Lord Ferdinand, was the purpose of your excursion to gather those Vereners, I asked? He gave me a thin smile and shook his head. No, Lady Letizia, we merely happened upon them. Our objective was to find an Ites face stone. Indeed, Justice said, had those Ites not led us to that wild patch of Vereners, we never would have noticed them. It must have been the guidance of the gods. Eckert nodded with a smile. A glorious coincidence indeed. Just a short while later, and they would have wilted. Despite their insistence on the whole thing being a stroke of luck, I recalled Justice mentioning that Ites were drawn to Verener nectar. It seemed to me that the Ehrenfest trio had subtly manipulated the knights into gathering the flowers, but perhaps it was just my imagination. Would they really have planned all this, even scheduling our days of rest in a manner that suited their intentions? It wouldn't surprise me. I suddenly felt like a piece atop a Gwenin board, being moved wherever Lord Ferdinand pleased. The thought was nothing short of unnerving. And the afterword! This installment, collecting sale bonuses and previously unpublished short stories, was a long time in the making. Readers of the A books have been requesting many of these stories for quite a while, but we had to wait for enough of them to accumulate. Seeing them all together in one place reminded me just how many I've written. Of course, another short story collection means more beautiful illustrations by Shina-sama. In an ideal world, there would have been one for each chapter, but I once again ended up having to pick and choose. There aren't many stories from Rosamund's point of view in this volume. Sales bonuses are inevitably written from the perspective of other characters. But that means a wide variety of artwork covering the lower city, the temple, nobles, retainers, and members of the royal family. This volume marks the first time Shina-sama had drawn Bartle of the former Veronica faction, though we have the illustrator of Part 4 of the manga to thank for his design. Because the stories in this installment span Part 2 to Part 5, Volume 4, the cover art shows Rosamund as both an apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden and a third year at the Royal Academy. In both cases, she's carrying a plant paper book. The color illustration is a gathering of this volume's narrators. Shina-sama commented how many characters there were, but still managed to make room for them all. I applaud her excellence. Oh, and the 4-panel manga are as adorable as ever. As always, my utmost thanks to everyone who read this book. Let us meet again soon. Okay, I'm gonna have to... Let's see. I hate that this thing's so tiny! Wish I had a way to zoom in. Hold on. Is there a way to zoom in? No, let's just go... Damn it. Okay, you guys are going to have to look at these for me. I'm going to try and make sure this is at a high enough resolution so you guys can see it. Oh, this is when she's talking to Tulia talking to Otto about the crepes. Okay, now I'm confused at this. I could have swore this was Tulia and Lutz. Oh, I know this one. Ralph is telling Lutz he better not make Tuli cry.
Oh no, this is what I'm talking about, the finesse. Oh no. I can't even really read it too well. Oh, I found the color. Help, I'm in the background freaking out.
Okay, I'm gonna have to end this off here, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.